Hey guys, so today I am kind of swamped. I've been a little swamped this week, which is fine. I've had a crazy past 2 weeks. My husband had the flu. I had a cold this weekend. Luckily, I didn't get the flu. I'm having to take some preventative medicines to make sure, just in case there's any germs left around the house, flu germs, I don't get it. But I'm just drainy, and congested, so I'm gonna try my best not to sniffle too much through this video. And I'm not gonna edit this video, or at least minimally edit, because like I said, I'm just swamped. So today's video is gonna be a pretty easy one. Shoot, I forgot to check and see who requested this. I wanna say it was Jason G. But if that's wrong, I will pop in here and tell you who actually requested it. But if it was Jason G, here you go. If it wasn't, here you go, so-and-so. But they were asking what my favorite true crime movies are, and I thought that would be an easy video for me to do today. I'm not picking my nose. I have tissue up in my nose, and I'm like, if it feels like it's falling out, I'm gonna shove it back up in there, so sorry. So I thought I would go over some true crime movies that I like to watch. He requested this not long ago. I figured this would be an easy video for me to do and also give you guys some content to watch right now. A lot of them are documentaries. I think about half of them are probably more than half of them are documentaries, because that's really what I enjoy watching. But I did put a few movies in there, and I'll go over them and explain sort of what they are, why I like them, whatnot, while I do my hair. So my hair is kind of frizzy today. It kind of curled nicely yesterday, and then it fell flat and just turned into frizz. So I'm gonna straighten curl it, which is what I do. My roots are very, very, very curly normally, so I might just touch my roots and my bangs with a flat iron. And then I have this handy tool which curls your hair, and it's gonna make some noise, so you'll hear that, so I apologize if that drives you insane, but it's quicker than curling my hair with a straightener or with a curling iron. So the first movie that I wanted to talk about and sort of recommend is one that I've actually only seen once, but I enjoyed it. And I enjoyed it probably for different reasons. For probably the same reasons that most people didn't like it, I think. And that is My Friend Dahmer. So My Friend Dahmer is based on a book written by someone who went to high school with Jeffrey Dahmer. And he talked about things that Jeffrey did, how he was as a person, how he was as a high school student, sort of socially, and it leads up to his first murder. Now, I think a lot of people were disappointed in the film because it didn't touch on his murders, and I didn't really expect it to. I figured it would either show maybe the first one or just hint at it, and it ended up hinting at it. It was more so the psychology and the backstory of his life, and he did a lot of, he tortured animals and stuff. He experimented on animals, and his parents, he had a rough home life. His parents didn't really get along, etc. Not that any of that excuses what he did. It doesn't touch it, but it was just really interesting seeing sort of a future iconic serial killer being brought up, growing up, and going through puberty, and it sort of gave you signs to watch out for, I feel. And not that if your kid is doing any of these things besides the animal stuff, you should be seriously concerned, but he, sorry, I have to replace the tissue in my nose, excuse me. Oh, here's my bump. Here's how big I am now. He just was very awkward, did a lot of things, really uncomfortable things to get attention in school. And it just touched on that a lot, which was really interesting. Another interesting thing about the movie is that it was filmed in Dahmer's old home, in his actual home that he grew up in. So that just sort of adds an eerie layer to it, I guess. But it was really good, and I recommend it if you're into more psychology or the past of certain serial killers and stuff. See how nice that looks? See? And it's going to fall. I'm not going to look like a colonial woman when this is done, I promise. I'm going to comb them out. But, yeah, I recommend that if you're into slow-burning films that just sort of talk about, like I said, the psychology behind what someone became, I guess you could say. But that one is the one on the list that I probably know the least about because I've only seen it once. The rest of these I've seen countless times, so I can go into more depth with them. The second one that I really enjoy, and this can be considered controversial, I guess, if you are heavily into Manson and you don't believe Linda Kasabian or Vince Bugliosi's stories about what happened. But there was a documentary done on the Biography channel, gosh, probably like 12 years ago now. And Linda Kasabian is the main narrator of what happened. Her and Vincent Bugliosi, who was the lawyer who put Charlie Manson and the Manson family behind bars. Linda Kasabian, if you don't know much about the Manson murders, 5 people were murdered the first night to the next night by basically a cult led by Charlie Manson. And one of the killers who was involved, she didn't kill anybody. Nobody says that she killed anybody, so that's very true. She was sort of the lookout that night of the Sharon Tate murders, and she was, she did not like give herself up or anything. She was like arrested and caught, and then ended up giving up all the others for immunity. So she told everybody exactly what happened, said that she was a lookout, and sort of like that she was hoping that it would stop. And Vincent Bugliosi's story about Linda is that she was like a true flower child of the 60s, and she was what a hippie was supposed to be and not what the Manson family turned hippie culture into in society's eyes, which was like a bunch of low-life killers and people who didn't respect the law and stuff like that. But Linda has been like in witness protection ever since. She's been living another life as someone else somewhere else. And she, for the first time, like came on this film to tell her story and tell what actually happened that night. And I believe it for the most part. I question whether or not she really tried to stop anything or whatever. But nobody's gonna know. It's not like I'm fully doubting her, and it's not like I'm fully supporting her. It's more like no one will ever know. All we know is what they've all corroborated of each other, and they've all said, you know, like Tex came in and said, I'm the devil, I'm here to do the devil's work. They've all said that Susan was the one to kill Sharon, and what she said to her before she died, and etc. So it's really interesting because it's like a documentary where they act it all out, and the only problem people have is that the guy who played Charlie in this sounds like he's from Texas or something. Like he's just got this weird, like very thick Southern accent, and everybody's like, that's not Charlie. But everybody does really good in it, and it's really cool to see it sort of acted out in a respectful way, especially after the past year with that stupid Hillary Duff movie and people trying to get a cash grab on Sharon's death and everything. This was done well before any of that, and it was just very interesting to see it all acted out and hear Linda telling the story of what happened that night. So that one I highly recommend. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's just called Manson, but you can look up like Manson Biography channel. I should try and if I remember, I'll link all these below, the ones that I'm recommending, so that you can see their pages and stuff. Okay, let me keep moving, because I don't want this to be a 40-minute long video of me rambling. Witness. This is another one I've only seen once, but it was really good. This is on Netflix right now, I believe. It is the story of a girl, I forget her last name, but her first name was Kitty, and I believe this happened in the 1960s. But this girl was murdered outside of, I think it was like an apartment complex, or, you know, like a housing development of some sort. She was murdered, and all the neighbors and stuff heard it. People were looking out their window, and nobody did anything. And it was talking about the effects of societal pressure, and the psychology behind it. I'm really into psychology about this stuff. I love psychology, but I was talking about how nobody helped her. She died. She was murdered. And it was a long, drawn-out thing, and nobody went outside to help her. And how everybody was scared, and because nobody else was helping, like, you know, one person might have thought, I should go help, but nobody else is doing anything. So it, like, just sort of scared them all into doing anything, and not because of that, but, I mean, they could have stopped it. This poor girl was murdered, and it's really sad, and I believe, like, her sister or something is in it. Somebody that she was close to or related to is in it, and they're just talking about how upset they are that the witnesses did nothing, and, you know, how if you see an injustice being done, you need to speak up, you need to do something. So that one was really interesting. The first film on my list, which some people might not want to call it a film, but the first movie on my list that is a true crime movie that I've always enjoyed is not one that you should go to for factual information, but it's like a guilty pleasure movie of mine, and that is From Hell. And that is the Jack the Ripper film from, I believe, the early 2000s with Johnny Depp and, what was that girl's name? Heather Graham. I really liked her. But it's a good movie. I really like the grittiness of it, the filthiness of it. I feel like it gives a good feeling of Whitechapel in the 1880s. Whitechapel in, I think it's in London, in England, where the Ripper murders happened. And you sort of get to know all the victims of Jack the Ripper and see their murders happen. The only thing that's not, like, they take a lot of liberties with it, especially in the fact that they name the killer in the film. And it's not off the wall, the person that they name, because the person that they name, I believe, is like a doctor or something. Some sort of professional. And that is a highly regarded suspicion in the Jack the Ripper killings, is that this person knew what they were doing, because they would remove certain organs from the victims, and nobody would really know how to do that besides a doctor, especially in the 1800s. Like, people weren't just, like, knowledgeable about human anatomy. So that one is, again, they take liberties. It's not the most accurate film, but it's entertaining, and I really like the gritty and filthy feel of it, and realizing what those people were living in day to day, and then they just get murdered by this asshole. Like, it's kind of depressing, but it's a very good movie. Like I said, it's a guilty pleasure. Pull my bangs out of here. The next movie is another documentary. It's a lot like the Manson documentary in that it's fully acted out. And it was on Netflix. I don't think it's on there anymore. But it is called Soaked in Bleach. And it is the story of basically what this private investigator believes happened to Kurt Cobain. Now, if you don't know much about Kurt Cobain's death, it's sort of shrouded in controversy and mystery. And if you want to know how I feel about it, I believe almost everything that happened in this documentary. And I have for a long time. A lot of people suspect that Courtney Love, who is the late wife of Kurt had something to do with his death. Or actually killed him. I don't think she actually killed him. I think she had him killed. And this documentary really goes into that. It is a real private investigator who was really hired by Courtney Love when Kurt was dead, but nobody knew he was dead yet, except for Courtney, and I forget the guy's name who helped her out. I know it. It's a good friend of theirs. I think it was a guy who was the nanny of Frances Bean, but nobody knew that Kurt was dead. They just thought he was missing. Courtney hired this PI to help find him, and she was very stingy with the information she would give this guy. She was like asking him, should I do this? Should I put this out in the papers? Like, like suicide attempts of mine or something like that to get his attention. Like, he thought her behavior was really odd in the first place. Secondly, she was always on heroin. They all were. And a lot of the stuff that she told him kept getting, she would contradict herself constantly. She would tell him one thing, and then he would find out another, and he would call her on it, and she'd be like, oh yeah, that's right, that's totally what I meant, or what. And it was like big stuff, like where somebody was at a certain time, like what state they were in, or, just weird stuff like that. And the one guy who I believe was the one to actually kill Kurt, I think he did it for drugs. I think he was fucked out of his mind. I think she had him hooked, and he just did what she wanted. I don't necessarily think this guy was as malicious as I feel she is. I think he was just really hooked on drugs and did whatever he had to do to get his supply. And when the private investigator wanted to interview him, Courtney set it up and was like, yeah, I'll have him over at my house and you can come and ask him whatever. And then the PI shows up, and dude is doped out of his mind on heroin. Like, can't even say his own name. He's so high. And it's like, why would you have someone that high to talk to a private investigator about what happened to your dead husband? And again, at this point, he's missing. Or I think he was dead. They knew he was dead at that point, and they were trying to continue figure out what happened. Her own lawyer, her divorce lawyer was dealing with a lot of it when Kurt went missing and stuff, because I think Kurt had put in a request to remove Courtney from his will, and that request had never been executed because he died before it could happen. The private investigator has phone calls recorded with the divorce lawyer. They're talking about the suicide note that Kurt wrote, which in my opinion was a I'm quitting the band note. And then the bottom half, there's this big part written in totally different size, totally different handwriting, basically saying take care of Frances, blah, blah, blah. It's 3 lines as to, yeah, I'm killing myself. If you read the rest of it by itself, it does not sound like a suicide note. The lawyer is saying how suspicious the note is. And then she's like, wait, are you recording this call? And the private investigator's like, yeah, I record all my calls. And she's like, damn it. And it hangs up on him. She's calling out, she knows Kurt and Courtney. She works for both of them. And she's calling out how fucking shady it is that her one living client, who is rich as hell, is acting really weird. You wouldn't do that if you believed your client, if you didn't suspect anything, and they're a cash cow for you. Why would you go talking to a private investigator about how suspicious that is? So that one's really good, and I really like that one. I think the acting in it is great. All the people who play Courtney and everybody. It's really entertaining. It's really sad. It's really fucking sad. You feel awful for Kurt and what he must have been going through. It goes and talks to people that he grew up with, or people who were in bands with him when he was younger, and people saying they never suspected that he would kill himself. He wasn't that depressed. He was always a person who was in touch with this dark side, but never to that point. So that just didn't make sense to them. It was really, really good. The next one is one that I've probably seen, out of everything on my list, I've probably seen this maybe like top 3, maybe top 5 the most. It's like, sadly, and this is going to sound really fucked up on my end, but I just like playing stuff like this in the background. I like playing like true crime documentaries, 9/11 documentaries, stuff like that. I have a feel for empathizing with something terrible like that, and just realizing that, and it's not to say that I'm using this like to make myself feel better about my own life, because that's really fucked up, but it really puts your life into perspective when you, which is probably a reason a lot of you guys are interested in it too. It's like how sad that is, and how lucky you are to have the life that you have, and have the loved ones that you have close to you and okay and stuff like that. So this one and like 9/11 documentaries sort of just kind of run in the background, and Holocaust films, which I'll talk about at the end too, are kind of just my go-to thing. This one is Columbine 0 Hour. Now, this one, I don't know when it was made. I want to say it was like early 2000s. It's not the highest production quality. It's not the greatest documentary in the world, but it's another one. I really like documentaries where things are acted out, because I am not an auditory learner, in that if I just hear something, like, it's really hard for me to listen to a podcast unless I am like mowing the lawn and I have it in my headphones, something where it's forcing me to focus on the words, because if I just hear you telling me something, it doesn't stick like it would if I see it, or, you know, stuff like that. So Columbine 0 Hour, I really liked. It's really fucking sad, because it's children. I mean, it's awful, but it's all about Columbine. It is acted out what happened, basically minute by minute. It goes through the timeline of events. It shows actual security footage from the school cameras. It plays actual 911 calls coming from inside the school, and it touches on all the victims and what happened to them, how they died, and sort of like what was said to them before they were killed, which is a part of what makes Columbine so awful, was that it was such a hateful crime. I mean, any crime is a hateful crime, but this one particularly, when you have very immature, very mentally ill high school students killing each other, they're gonna say some really fucked up shit to each other before they do it. And it's really sad seeing what these students went through. But it's a very interesting documentary about it. I've watched it countless times, and it's just, it's kind of it's not, I don't mean peaceful in, you know, like, and it's peaceful to watch. I mean in that it's not like, I don't feel like it's a super loud in your face documentary. It definitely has its moments, and obviously it's very upsetting, but it's one that just kind of plays, and it's got the same tone throughout, and it doesn't like do this roller coaster of emotions and stuff. It's like dead serious. This is the tone. This is what we're doing. And I really like that feel in documentaries, where it's just, because then all of a sudden, if you're like I said, I'll have it on in the background and I'm paying attention, and then suddenly it's like this really happy thing, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on now, you know? And then I have to like rewind, and I don't know what's going on. This is like the same tone throughout, and I really like that. I've only got 5 more, which I'm going to fly through a couple of them. And by the time I'm done with them, I should be done with my hair too, so that'll be perfect timing. Yay. The next one is one that was also on Netflix, but I don't believe it is anymore. But it is called Tower. And Tower is about the shootings at the University of Texas in the 60s, I believe it was. I don't know too much about this shooting. I've done some research on it, some Google deep dives on it, more so because I'm curious about the actual clock tower and the setting of it, and I wish I could find more images from the day. And I would really like to visit the University of Texas and somehow get up to this clock tower, but I don't know that you can just go up there, and I wouldn't blame them if you can't. But it is a guy, I forget his name too. Damn, I'm not doing very good on this. Something with the word white in it. Like his last name is White or something. Damn, I feel really bad that I can't remember this off the top of my head, because I have done research on this. But it's really heartbreaking. It was at a college, University of Texas, in the 60s. Hot summer day. Guy snapped. Killed I believe his mother and his wife, and maybe he had kids, I don't remember. But he killed his whole family, and then went to the University of Texas clock tower, and with a gun and ammo and everything, and just started shooting down at the ground randomly at people. And at first people didn't know where the shots were coming from. You have a great view of fucking everything from up there, so he could see everybody and just start picking people off one by one, and no one knew where to hide at first. And he shoots all these people. Excuse me, sorry. He shoots and kills a lot of people, and some people survive. It wasn't the first, sorry, I'm putting tissue in my nose again, I apologize, that's gross. It wasn't the first ever mass shooting, because actually there was other mass shootings way earlier in American history than you would think. But I think it was like the first big, media publicized one that happened. Like the first person to get shot was a pregnant woman. And she got shot through the back, I believe. Like through the back and outer stomach or something like that. And her baby did not make it. And she was with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend leaned over to help her, and he got shot right in front of her and killed right away. And then she spends the rest of the ordeal, which is like hours, out in the middle of the sun, in the Texas heat, laying on concrete, while everyone around her is like getting shot, and she can't move, she can't do anything, and it takes hours for a few guys who were like fucking absolute heroes to go out and do this. They go out, they realize she's still alive, they have to get her out, and they risk their lives to go and pick her up. And like, I'm starting to get emotional thinking about it, because it's so sad and it's so like heroic that these guys did this for her. But they get her to safety. She's like so dehydrated, loss of blood. I mean, it's fucked up. It's really bad. There was some other people, like one guy was riding on a bike with his brother, and they were delivering newspapers, and one of them got shot. They survived. Just a ton of people just getting shot all over the place until they can figure out A, where the shooting has come from, and B, how to get up there and make it stop. And it takes a long time, and it's an interesting documentary because they switch between real life interviews of the people who were there that day and that survived that day, including one of the guys who rescued the pregnant woman, and he like can't stop crying because he keeps saying that he feels like he should have saved her sooner, like he should have done more for her. But really and she keeps telling him, there's nothing you could have done, like you did more for me than you'll ever understand or know, like do not feel bad. But they switch between that and basically a cartoon. Not a cartoony cartoon, it's more like, I think they had actors act out all of these scenes, and then they put this sort of cartoon filter over it, which is really interesting because it helps you witness what happened without feeling like you're witnessing what happened. Does that make sense? Like, you're seeing these cartoon people get shot, and you're seeing what they went through, and it's not as vulgar, I guess, or as disturbing as if you were to see a real life shooting. So it sort of helps filter that reality of this actually happened and here's what it looked like, which is really, really, really interesting. I like the way they switched between the two. So that one's called Tower, and I highly recommend that one. That one, again, a lot like Columbine, 0 Hour, has the same tone throughout. So it's not like jumping all over the place so much. It's really good. Next one is another documentary, of course. This one is on Netflix now. It's a new one that I've watched 3 times now. Skipping some of the most vulgar parts. And that's a lot for me to say because I can handle a lot when it comes to true crime and stuff. But the reason I skip these parts is because it has to do with animals, and I will not watch animals being hurt or killed or anything like that. You've probably heard of it. If you haven't seen it yet, get ready, because Jesus, this is a wild ride. I had two of my friends who are also into true crime text me within an hour of each other and say, oh my God, have you seen this documentary yet on Netflix? Watch it. And I was like, okay. And I watched it and I couldn't stop. I was so hooked. It's called Don't Fuck with Cats. Jesus, this is a wild ride. Like, oh my God. I was like shocked through half of it. Really pissed off through most of the rest of it. Just hanging on the edge of my seat, waiting to see what was going to happen. But it's about, I don't even want to say what it's about really, because nobody told me, because it's better if you just sort of learn about it. But I'll tell you the gist of the very beginning of it. It's a guy who did an internet video where he's harming some cats. And I don't want to say any more than that. If you're sensitive to that stuff, fast forward through that part, you'll get what happens. They'll kind of tell you what happens. But people on the internet are obviously outraged on Facebook and stuff. And these groups start where they basically go on a manhunt to find this guy. And holy shit, does it get worse and worse the more they dig for him. Like, it's really, really fucked up. But it's a really good documentary. I really liked it. Like I said, I've watched it like 3 times now. So I recommend that if you think you can handle it. You do hear what happens to these animals. They show parts of it, but like I said, you can skip that. I skipped. It's kind of obvious when it's happening, so you can kind of skip through it. Yeah, I highly recommend that. It's really good. Okay, let me fix this. I've got 3 more that I'm going to touch on really fast because I'm almost done with my hair. One that is really good for actual footage, which is really what interests me when I'm watching or deep diving into a true crime, is finding footage, finding locations, finding actual crime scene photographs and stuff. I really like to put myself there. Is one that is available on Amazon Prime. If you have Prime now, it is called Parkland Inside Building 12. And it's about the Parkland shootings at that high school. And it's all the, it's really cool how they do like a diagram of the school. Like they do like a blueprint of the school with the little dots. And it's like 2 dots are the shooter, like 1 dot is the shooter or whatever. And there'll be like 2 teachers, and you just see the dots with their names. And the dots are color coded so you know if it's students, the shooter, or faculty. And it's filled with like every ounce of cell phone footage that those kids filmed in that school. Like, it's, oh my God, I cried so much through this movie because these poor children like are just huddled in their classroom hearing gunshots, screaming and crying, and they don't know where the shots are coming from. There's one where a kid had been shot, and I'm 99% sure this was a child who did not make it, sadly. And he's out in the hallway just crying and screaming and begging for help. And they're all in the room terrified, and everyone's saying, shh, shh, like, don't say anything, because they don't know if it's the shooter trying to lure them out. Like, they don't know what to do. And so you're hearing this poor kid just out there, like, dying. And it's really, really sad. It's just heartbreaking what these kids had to go through that day. And it shows the aftermath of a lot of them, a lot of the survivors. Some of the people who, like, one girl was like assumed dead when the police showed up because her heartbeat was so, like, her pulse was so low they could barely feel it, and she'd lost so much blood. Like, it took them a while to get her. Like, they came in that room and took the other wounded kids out and left her for dead. Not left her for dead, like it was their fault. It was a misunderstanding, in that they checked her pulse and there was none. And then someone found a pulse on her, and they immediately rushed her out of there, got her to safety, got her to the hospital. She ended up surviving miraculously. So it's like her story too, like what kind of surgery she had to go through, what she's been through mentally since. And it's just really heartbreaking, but it's a very good breakdown of exactly where everything happened, what room everybody was in, where everybody was placed in that room when it happened. Like, if you're into like crime scene reports or anything like that, this one is great because it really delves into all of that. The last one, besides touching on a few Holocaust things, is, I don't even really have to talk about because I have a whole video about it, is American Crime about Sylvia Likens. So if you have not seen my Sylvia Likens video, check that one out, or just check out the movie American Crime. It's a little diluted, in my opinion. It doesn't show everything that happened to Sylvia, but it gives you a good feel of what the poor girl went through before she died. And it's a really sad telling of her story. So that one's really good. And then lastly, I just wanted to touch on some Holocaust things that I really enjoy learning about. The Holocaust is something that I got into in like the 5th or 6th grade. There was a book we had to do accelerated reading when, like, back in the late 90s. And you would like read a book a week or something and then do a test on the book to prove that you read it, and then you'd read another book and you got more points the harder the book was, etc. And man, my hair is super curly. That's okay because these will fall out today. But I did one on a book called Behind the Bedroom Wall by Laura E. Williams. I still remember it because it was like my favorite book for years. I have 3 copies of the book in all different, there's different covers you could buy. But it's like a middle school level book and it's really good. But it's about a girl who finds out she lives in Germany during the Holocaust, and she is in the Nazi youth, and she thinks her family are proud Nazis. She's a young girl, and she finds out that her parents are hiding a Jewish family behind her bedroom wall. And she's really conflicted on what to do because she's been brought up to think that the Nazis are absolutely right and we should do everything for Germany and blah, blah, blah. But then her family, like, she has to give up her family if she decides to rat on them. So it's a really good story, and it really got me hooked as a young kid in the Holocaust. So I love Holocaust documentaries, films, anything to do with the Holocaust I'm into. My favorite Holocaust film to watch is Schindler's List. That is, oddly enough, one that I will just play in the background while I'm cleaning the house if I have nothing else to watch, whatever. It's fucking heart-wrenching. It's really brutal. It's really vulgar. But it's a really good film, and is mostly accurate on the Schindler story, and just shows the long transition from a guy who just cared about himself and money and whoever was in power, which at the time was the Nazis, to realizing that these Jewish people were people, and that he would do anything he could, and he should have done more, and like the regret that he didn't do more when he saved like 1,500 Jews. Like, it was insane. That one is really good. And then another one, if you are really wanting to see something really fucked up and really wanting to see the truth, and I know I'm gonna get some fucking idiot on this video commenting saying that the Holocaust was a hoax. Fuck you. But if you're really wanting to see the most fucked up parts of the Holocaust, a couple of years ago they finally released, I want to say it was Hitchcock did a film on the Holocaust, and he collected all this film of the aftermath and all the bodies, and it was like deemed too horrible to watch and put away on a shelf basically for 50 years or something, 40 years or something, and it was released a few years ago, and I watched it, and holy shit. It's one of those things where the stuff that they show, your brain can't process that it's real. Like, you're watching bodies being like dumped and stuff, like close up in color, like it's insane, and you're like, that's mannequins. Like, your brain has to put that filter on for you and be like, that's not real, because it's so fucking crazy, like what happened there and what the aftermath was and what these, like, the liberation soldiers came upon at these camps. And it's like, it's fucked. Like, I was so depressed for days after watching it because it's just, it really sticks with you. So that one, a lot, like, don't fuck with cats. Don't watch unless you have a really strong stomach for that kind of stuff. But if you are into seeing the nitty gritty of something horrible that did happen, I do recommend it. So that's all I have for today. I'm sorry if this was like the most boring video. I'm sorry that this was a video of me rambling. I know I ramble a lot. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did like it, please hit the thumbs up button below. If you have any suggestions for videos, true crime or otherwise, please leave those in the comments below. If you'd like to see more videos, please hit the subscribe button. I upload new videos every Wednesday. And other than that, I will see you guys next week.